Hello gamers, Matthew here from Grey Army Gaming. Welcome to the concluding episode of our July Sci-Fi Solo Big Show. Now we have had some fantastic participants throughout the month of July, and now I've been given the honor in August to conclude this incredible story. We have told a tale of the adventures of Vector X, and I don't want to give a recap here in the beginning, but instead I will include a link to the playlist below where you can go and watch all of the previous episodes from all of our brilliant creators. A little bit of practical information before we get started. Each episode has been typically around 15 minutes, but I will be giving myself the leeway of going a bit over time tonight if needed. This is a great story that needs a proper conclusion, so I'm not going to rush it. I still have a stopwatch here, however, so we can watch the time and see how much time this story requires in order to bring it to its conclusion. In addition, I started in the Numenera world with the Cipher system, and now I will be concluding where I started. As such, I've translated Vector X character back into the Cipher system, the Numenera system, but of course a lot weaker given the events of the previous episodes. Vector X is hurt and he is weakened. As such, his stats will be this: might will be at 2, quite low, speed at 6, and intellect at 6. So a hurt and a damaged Vector X, but a Vector X that is still able to function like normal. Anything else that is relevant to the setting and rules will come out in the session, and I will just talk about it then. Well, I think that is all the information that we need to go ahead now and dive into this concluding episode of The Adventures of Vector X. Vector X hastily makes his way out of the ship, leaving behind JL and Ansel where they lie. With care, he enters the crystalline monolith. In contrast to his previous visit, there is no resistance. The defense system has been shut down for some odd reason. He makes a direct line to the center of the monolith, where there stands a lone cube of bright steel about a meter across in dimension. On the side of the cube is an ornately carved image of an eye, which shimmers with blue light. Just as Vector X arrives at the cube, a blue beam of light, almost like a blue flame, shines up from the cube's surface. The blue light assumes humanoid form, but without any distinct features. And from the light comes a gentle voice. "Welcome, Vector X. How do you know my name? We have a record of your visits here in our databanks. In fact, we have a record of your entire life, of the lives of everyone in Telenar, in that place the Underfolk have named Crowd City. We know that the technology you bear is not malicious, but is meant for the well-being of the human civilization, to protect the human species, to protect the Underfolk." Protect? What do you mean, protect? Help me to understand. Do you ever wonder why all of you are crammed into the walls of the city of Telenar? Do you ever wonder why the wasteland of the beyond closes in around you and stretches further into the horizon than anyone can imagine? Do you think this is a coincidence or consequences of a natural process? Do you ever wonder? I don't understand. I don't understand. Please do not speak so cryptically. Tell me why this is the case. You see, the walls of the city are not there to keep the desert out, but to keep all of you in. You are prisoners in the city. They need you to remain clustered together. Their technology only works when you are in close proximity to one another. Who are they? Who are they? And what technology are you talking about? They are the nanites, a powerful force of machines that thrive on the symbiosis of biology and technology. They need your bodies in close proximity so that they can build their biotechnical neural network, and only then will they gain access to full knowledge and thus expand their power beyond the system. Their attempts in the past have been thwarted, but now they are getting closer to success. This device, however, will defeat the nanites once and for all, if only it is properly activated by the proper Underfolk. With this final word, the light of the humanoid form fades, and a new, brighter shimmer passes through the carving of the eye on the side of the cube. Now, the question is, does Vector X notice anything else at this point? Yes, and. So what does he notice? Let's take a card and check here. A reverberating echo. As this light suddenly shifts through this cube, he hears this thud, reverberating echo sound. He kneels down next to this cube. The question is there anything else written there? Is there an inscription? We'll take the yes and to say there's also an inscription there. And what does the inscription say? Let's grab another card here. Foil Fallen Network. Foil Network. I love this. There is an inscription that says, foil the network. So in some sense, this device is meant to work against the project of the nanites and their process of building a neural network. Vector X kneels down and focuses his bionic eye onto the iris of the carving. And when he does this, suddenly blue energy shoots out from the carving into his eye, blazing, and then back into the carving like a feedback loop. And this deep sound of thuds stops at this point. Everything goes silent as the top of the cube slides off and drops to the floor with another reverberating and out of the cube rises up a small silver disc the size of a human hand, and it floats mysteriously above the cube. On the surface of the disc is a thin layer of what appears to be black dirt. And it strikes Vector X at this point. The seeds, the incantation. This must be what the professor has been trying to tell me all along. And as Vector X sits and ponders this, there's a shadow in the back of the room. The question is, does Vector X notice it? Maybe. And we'll say this. Not immediately. He doesn't notice the shadow immediately, but he does feel a slight breeze behind him. He notices that something or somebody has entered the monolith, and immediately now he thinks it is another one of these creatures that is protecting the monolith. So he begins to turn around quickly and to look, and there he sees behind him Ansel, clutching her chest with one hand. Her hand is covered with blood, but Vector X also notices strange wires and mechanical pieces sticking out around the wound. In her other hand is the pistol that Vector X left on the floor as he fled the ship in horror and haste. Her eyes are blazing a brilliant red, and both of them are fixed directly on Vector X. She raises the pistol and points it directly at him. Step away from the cube. I will not let you do this. I have given my life for this, and I'm not afraid to take yours. Vector X, raising his hands, takes a step away from the cube. Good. Ansel, why are you doing this? Who are you? What are you? Says Vector X to her. You still don't have any idea who you are, do you? Or at least who you were, who we were. But it's too late for that. The past is in the past, and now it is the present, and now you will help me carry out this final step. Take out the data card that you stole from me just now. Take it out, I know you have it. And pull out the other data card that you also carry. Vector X slowly, carefully reaches down into his pocket and he pulls out the data card that he took from Ansel's body when he fled the ship. and he pulls out the other data card, which strangely looks very similar to this one. Ansel again raises her voice. Now join them together. Vector X flips them over and sees that there's in fact two sides that fit into one another, and he places the cards together. Immediately when he does this, there's a blazing electric bolt that shoots through the combined cards as like sparks fly off. And Ansel says, "Good. This virus should be more than adequate to destroy this entire structure. Now place it on the disk." Vector X pauses, feeling the energy moving through the card. "Do it," says Ansel. "Do it now." Now I have an idea what Vector X is going to do, but I'm going to roll for this on the fate chart, and I'm going to say it's likely. So I'm going to roll twice. On the fate mill, I'm going to roll twice and take the more yes-oriented answer. Yes, but, and. Yes, and. So I'm going to take that 20. Yes, and. So immediately, Vector X takes the card that is surging with energy, and he walks towards the disc as if he's going to set it on the disc of dirt. He looks over his shoulder and sees Ansel raising the gun even higher. And at the last second, he takes the disc, the card, and he turns around and smashes it onto the ground, shattering into countless pieces as the pieces go flying around. And immediately when he does this, Ansel lets out a horrific shriek. And I'm going to go with yes and. Not only does he smash this thing into pieces, but at the same time, Vector X charges at Ansel. Now, Ansel has just a split second now to think as this horrific scene plays out before her, and Ansel now is going to raise the weapon and fire off a shot. Now, I'm going to say that Ansel is a level 7 character, which means we're going to need to roll a 21 if we want to be able to avoid being hit. But I'll say this, Ansel is wounded pretty heavily, so we'll drop this down to a level 6. And I'm also going to spend some effort here for Vector X. I'm going to spend one effort here, and we'll take it off of might, which is unfortunately going to drop us down to 0 on our might, and our 5 speed. So we're going to be pretty weak because of this, but that will drop the level to a 15 plus to be able to avoid this attack, this shot. So here we go, 15 plus. Is Vector X able to avoid the shot, or is Ansel going to hit? And it's a 10. No, it is. The shot is going to go home and it's going to hit Vector X. The question is, where is it going to hit him? Oh, right in the midsection. So right in his torso. This is very poetic, in the same spot that Vector X had hit Ansel, in the chest. So Vector X, as he's charging immediately, he gets the shot in his chest. And with his momentum, he flies forward now, grabs onto Ansel, tackles her, and pushes her into the discs and wires behind her. Blood now is pouring out of his chest, and as he does this, there's a flash of brilliant blue light as both Vector X and Ansel are thrown into a kind of stasis. Suddenly, everything goes completely still. The pain subsides from both Vector X's chest and from Ansel's chest. Both of them seem to have fallen into a time loop triggered by the technology of the monolith. And now, time begins to flow backwards. There's a blue flash, and Vector X sees himself running from the ship and cautiously entering the monolith. He sees himself approaching the silver cube. There's another flash of blue, and time goes even further back. He flees out of the ship. He sees himself leaving the ship. He sees Ansel's motionless body lying on the floor of the ship. There's a spark in Ansel's chest. And when this spark sparks out of her chest amidst the blood, her eyes immediately shoot open, blazing red. She struggles to her feet, grabbing the pistol on the floor that Vector X has left in his haste, and she stumbles out of the door towards the monolith. There's another flash of blue light, and suddenly now, Vector X sees before him the Telenar library. He sees Professor Drahlden sitting in the middle of the reading room. Professor Drahlden is paralyzed in shock as he stares forward, his pupils dilated as Ansel circles around him, her eyes blazing red. She slides into the shadows just before Vector X arrives. And the horrible scene plays out once again of the nanobots that enter the professor's mouth and nose before he slumps over, dead. There's another flash of blue light, and immediately the vision is taken to a large, dark courtyard in the center of Telenar, just outside of the TSF headquarters. There are hundreds of individuals in dark clothes with tactical gear standing in attention. And a woman makes her way to an elevated podium. It is Ansel. She mouths several words to the attentive TSF agents and raises her fist in the air. Her eyes are blazing red, as are the eyes of each of the hundreds of agents standing there. Another flash of blue. The vision changes further back in time to a wounded Professor Drahlden, who is standing on a barren plain in the wasteland. Behind him, a glowing monolith is rising out of the ground. He mouths the words to Vector X, who is observing from this state of stasis, the words that are difficult to make out, but it looks like he is saying, "They, TSF, only way, stop." Another flash of blue light, and now suddenly the vision moves, and we see Vector X as a teenage boy, perhaps 13 or 14 years old. He's moving through Telenar with the underfolk, stealing and surviving, sliding through the shadows, but often under the watchful eye of another individual who regularly checks on Vector X, but from a distance, Professor Drahlden, who stands silently observing in the shadows, never interfering, but never letting Vector X go. Another flash of blue light. This time we see a brilliant white room. It looks to be in a medical facility of sorts. And there lies Ansel, a mere teenager of 13 or 14, on something of an operating table. Her arms, legs, and head are bound to the table. And standing next to her is a single figure, a man in a dark cloak. And you see suddenly now a pulsating orb enter into the room that illuminates her body. It's something of a glow orb illuminating her body, and you see different points on her body where blood is flowing through her. The man raises his hand as Ansel struggles and tries to pull away, but she can't move. The man raises his arm, and as he does so, you hear the sound of insects, a metallic sound. A cloud of nanobots comes flying into the room and envelops her. Ansel cries out in horror and pain, and then she falls unconscious. The nanobots fly away, leaving her torso and appendages torn to shreds as if they had been submerged in acid. The dark-clothed man again raises his arms, and other humanoid robots set to work rebuilding Ansel's body with mechanical implants, with mechanical arms, mechanical legs, and a mechanical torso. And after several hours, the robots leave, oh, I love this, motionless form. They leave the room with the job completed and Ansel's motionless form on the table. The cloaked man steps back into the room, reaches down, and activates the power source on the mechanism on Ansel's torso. Her torso writhes, her arms and legs twitch, and finally, her eyes shoot open with a blazing red light that bathes the room in red. There's another flash of blue as the vision changes once again. We see now Ansel as a small girl, perhaps 5 years old, walking down an alleyway in Telenar. Next to her is another small child, a boy with a glowing bluish light projecting from his face, perhaps from his eye. As they round the corner, they are suddenly jumped by TSF agents, 10 of them. The boy is unable to quite leave the girl, but something inside of him says to flee, to run. And so he turns and begins to run. The question is he able to run away? Maybe, but he tries to run away, but one of the TSF agents grabs him and slices him on his arm, leaving a bloody trail as he runs around the corner, leaving a trail of blood after him. The girl is taken and dragged away, and the boy flees into the shadows of Telenar. Another flash of blue light, and now we see Professor Drahlden in an intense argument with another man, an older man with a long white beard and weary eyes. The older man is holding Vector X's hand. In a fit of rage, he releases Vector X's hand. He pulls out a photograph and shoves it into the professor's face. It is a picture of a TSF agent with its visor up and blazing red eyes. And scribbled across the photo is the text, "They are the TSF now." The older man throws the photograph down at the feet of the professor and storms away. Another flash of blue light. Interesting. Another flash of blue light, and there is a chaotic sound. Vector X now sees himself as a small boy, not more than 3 or 4 years old, sitting on some stone stairs outside of a regal building. Improve prison was what I got here. Something is going to be improving in the prison of his life. He's blind in one eye. He's sitting on these stairs, perhaps stairs to one of the university buildings in Telenar. The wooden door behind him opens, and the professor walks out. The professor is holding a small metal box, and he opens it with a small key and puts the key into his pocket. And when he does this, there's a spark of blue light that comes from the box. Vector X raises his hand and touches the empty eye socket on his face. The professor takes Vector X's hand and leads him into the building. There's another flash of blue light. This time the vision changes to a garden in the housing area of Telenar. Compassion. Compassion seems to be the theme of this vision. You see Vector X's father in the distance, and in the center of the garden stands Professor Drahlden, smiling deeply in deep compassion for 2 children who are about 3 years old, who are sitting in front of him, playing in the black dirt. Around each of their necks is a curious metal amulet divided into 2 parts, with each of these children possessing one part of the whole. Professor Drahlden pulls out a pouch of seeds and hands one to each of the children. "This is our future. With this, we will be able to leave the walls of Telenar. This is our freedom, and this is our compassion for the underfolk. The children giggle and place the seeds into the dirt. And the professor raises his voice in a type of incantation. Anan Fatima, Anan Fatima, Anan Fatima. And instantly, 2 small shoots rise out of the dirt. The children look up with glee. The vision shifts for a final time, pulling out of the garden, out of the city of Telenar, and we are now given a bird's eye view of the walls of the city and the endless desert wasteland that surrounds the city that is a tiny speck on an otherwise barren planet. Following this, the vision shoots across the globe to the north to a glowing lake of lava with a shining crystalline monolith jutting out of the middle of the lava. And the vision flies through the door of the monolith and into the room where Vector X has just entered. There's a flash of brilliant blue light, and with a gasp of breath, Vector X opens his eyes again, the pain returning to him. He is no longer paralyzed. He looks down at his chest. He has been shot and is bleeding out at this point. And I take away the damage from his character sheet. Vector X is really unable to move at this point, grasping his chest. And I haven't thought about what is going to happen. No, and he does not pass out at this point. And not only that, but he has the strength to be able to lift his head and to see Ansel. And there he notices something surprising. Ansel has tears pouring down her face, out of her eyes, from the visions that they both saw together. And she looks to Vector X in pained, labored speech, in painful breaths of one who is close to death. She says to him, I know who you are. I know who we are. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I have failed you. Vector X, wheezing horribly, is starting to cough up blood. Ansel, he says to her, it's not over. There is still hope for you. There is hope for us. There is still redemption. Don't give up now. Stay with me. He stumbles, grasping himself, holding on to the steel cube. He reaches down into his pocket and he pulls out the pouch of seeds. He pulls out 2 black seeds from the pouch and places one in her hand where she's kneeling on the ground. He places the other one in his own hand, and he tries now to raise her up as best as he can. He's able to get her on to her feet. And together, they place their seeds on the small disc. On the small disc in the black dirt. And as they do this, all of their strength gives out. And they collapse to the floor. Both of their amulet halves are now glowing a beautiful blue as they're wheezing and bleeding out on the floor. With a little breath that he has left, Vector X whispers out a final phrase, a phrase that he has been taught by the professor. Anan Fatima. And the question is, does Ansel join in? Maybe, but Ansel remains silent. But you can see her reaching out to grasp Vector X's hand as he says the phrase again, Hanan Fatima. She, unable to speak at this point as blood is filling her throat, she squeezes his hand as if to join him into the phrase, Hanan Fatima. And as he recites the incantation for the third time, blue light radiates through the seeds and into the top of the room, filling the room with this incredible blue light. The peak of the monolith, something like the peak we see here, separates now at this point, and blue flames fly out from it, and it ignited under it as it ignites and floats up into the atmosphere, flying higher and higher through the sky above the desert wasteland, getting into the very peak of the atmosphere. At the apex of its flight, it explodes in a radiant blue blast like a blue firework at a celebration, and rays of blue light shine out in every direction. The rays, there are trillions upon trillions of them. There are as many rays of blue light as pieces of information stored in the databank of the monolith. These rays of light materialize into individual particles like small blue snowflakes that gently flow down to the ground, floating ever so gently. And everywhere these particles touch, a small green shoot of ironwood rises up from the ground. What was a barren wasteland devoid of life has suddenly turned into an endless field of green, of the beginnings of a great ironwood forest, and the beginning of a way out of Telenar for the underfolk, the beginning of true freedom and true compassion. There's a deep thud and a thunderous shake in the monolith, and the ground begins to shake and to open up like quicksand as the monolith now slowly begins to slide back to where it came from, deep within the lake of lava. With his last remaining strength, Vector X squeezes Ansel's hand that is already squeezing his. And as the lava begins to creep up around the walls of the monolith, it knocks in the walls. Along with the rubble lands also the discs and the wires of the databank, as these fall upon the motionless bodies of Ansel and Vector X. And as they both pass out of consciousness, they are both returned in a vision to a simple, beautiful garden where they sit hand in hand with one another, with Professor Drahlden standing above them, smiling warmly down at them as two beautiful ironwood shoots slowly rise out of the dirt. And this is where we will end our tale of Vector X. A huge thank you to all of the amazing creative people who have been involved in this project in the July Sci-Fi Solo Big Show. A huge thank you to Goober McSnorford. We have Deep Space Solo who was with us, Accidental DM, Grognard Solo Gaming, Games Gone South, Greek Solo RPG, and Solo Spelunking. Now, I have been very inspired by all of you and excited to continue trying similar projects like this in the future. If you'd like to see more content like this, please do subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, and I will continue to pursue more of these kind of ideas in the future. And most importantly, Thank you for joining us here today at Grey Army Gaming for this concluding episode of the adventures of Vector X. This is all done for the future of gaming. Thank you, and take care of yourselves.